Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This series is made possible in part through the generosity of Velpro, and we thank them for their support. My name is Melanie Paris, and I'm the Senior Director of Health Initiatives and Education here at the American Kidney Fund. Before I turn the presentation over to today's speaker, I'd like to direct your attention to the control panel you see on your screens. All participants are on mute, so we won't hear you, but we welcome your questions. If you have a question, please type it into the section of your control panel titled Questions. We'll see your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them either by replying to you in the questions box or out loud during the last several minutes of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on our website, kidneyfund.org/webinars, within the next 1 to 2 weeks. For those of you in attendance who are health professionals, we are glad that you've joined us today and hope you'll recommend this webinar to the patients you work with. However, as a friendly reminder, this webinar is not accredited for continuing education credits. If you believe that your accrediting body may offer you credits for attending this webinar, we'll be happy to send you a certificate of attendance after today's session. Simply email us at education@kidneyfund.org. Without further ado, allow me to introduce today's speaker, Carolyn Fabig. Carolyn is originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and has been a dietitian in the Washington, D.C. area since 2011. Currently, she is the kidney transplant dietitian at the George Washington University Hospital. Prior to her current role, she worked for a dialysis company as a dietitian. She found her passion for renal nutrition when her nephew was born with only one kidney. In her career, she seeks out opportunities to educate the general public about the importance of early detection of kidney disease and the importance of a healthy diet for kidney health. She currently volunteers with the American Kidney Fund, the National Kidney Foundation, and is on the NKF's Capital Area Medical Advisory Board. She is currently working with George Mason University, the University of Washington, D.C., and the American Kidney Fund on a diet compliance research grant for dialysis patients. In her spare time, you can find Carolyn walking all over Washington, D.C., taking pictures and searching for new and delicious restaurants or farmers markets. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about this presentation. Phosphorus and phosphorus binders are something that are near and dear to my heart. So away we go. This is all about trying to become like a phosphorus detective. Anybody that's on dialysis right now should understand how difficult it is to figure out what foods have phosphorus and what foods don't have phosphorus. So today what we're going to look at is what is phosphorus, why is it important, how can you as somebody who needs to manage your phosphorus with, kidney disease, when you have kidney disease and when you're on dialysis, and what can happen if your phosphorus happens to be out of range, either high or low. And hopefully today, after today, you're going to become a master phosphorus detective with the skills to find all the different sources of phosphorus and how to keep your phosphorus in range. Phosphorus is vital to the production of and storage the production and storage of our energy in the human body. It's the main component on our energy molecule, which is called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. It's widely available in our food, and it's important for like building bone health and in our teeth. We can find about 85 to 90% of our total body phosphorus is found in our bones and teeth. And it's also a component of our fats, our proteins, and our cell membranes. Sorry, sometimes I have some technical difficulties. Let's see now. There we go. Okay, high levels of phosphorus in our blood, which is what you're always hearing your dietitian talk about. Oh, your phosphorus is high, this, that, and the other. It's not immediately harmful. It's not going to all of a sudden cause some type of harm immediately, but it can cause severe long-term problems. The recommended range is, as you know, from 3.0 to 5.5 milligrams per deciliter. Some dialysis companies are even now saying you can have up to 6 milliliters, or a phosphorus up to 6. And these following slides are going to discuss how to make sure your phosphorus isn't too high. But I do want to always stress that even it's rare when you're on dialysis, you can have a severe drop in phosphorus. And if it drops under a 1.5 milligrams per deciliter or lower, can cause some muscular disturbances, coma, and death. So your dietitian is going to, of course, be aware. And this normally does not happen when you're on dialysis, is when you're like in the hospital or something like that, if for some reason. But I just want to let you know. But high phosphorus, or sometimes or medically known as hyperphosphatemia, I just call it high phos. It happens really, it can happen to most people, and it's because phosphorus is not removed very well during dialysis. And chronic high phosphorus can lead to bone disease, weak, brittle bones, calcifications of your arteries, of your veins, your eyes, and your muscles. And remember, your organs are muscles too, so it can be calcifying your organs. And when I talk about a calcification, I talk about, like, it's kind of putting little calcium and phosphorus deposits in your arteries or in your veins or in your eyes, and that's why you might see red eyes, or maybe this is why your skin is itching. And it's little calcifications or little pieces of bone, really, for lack of a better word, because phosphorus plus calcium equals bone, and it's what's going on inside your body. And this is why it can be detrimental. Bone disease, high phosphorus, called hyperphosphatemia, can lead to these weak and brittle bones, because when you have too much phosphorus in your blood, your body needs to combine that with calcium, because phosphorus and calcium are best friends, and they like to be together. So your body's going to pull calcium from your bones, because that's where you store your calcium. And then it's going to make your bones weak and brittle. It also can cause problems with the way that your body uses vitamin D and your parathyroid. It's all this whole like big circle that they all work together in tandem. And bone disease doesn't really show any symptoms until it's not too late, but until you end up with a fracture, because you don't notice. Maybe you might have some weak bones, or you might have some bone pain, but it's not something that is common or that you can tell right away. And then in severe cases, there is what's called caliphylaxis, or these calcifications can lead to what's called caliphylaxis. And that is when the calcium and the phosphorus have been building up in your blood vessels, in your muscles, in your soft tissue, in your organs, in your skin over a really long period of time. You might see some wounds on your hand or on your legs, or some discoloration. You might notice that you're itching and things like this, and it can cause painful skin ulcers that can end up giving you serious infections, because they would be open wounds, and they can lead to death. These are some pictures of some calcifications. Believe you me, there are many more gross pictures out there. But as you can see, the pictures of the legs, these are the beginning stages, actually medium stages of these open wounds that could end up giving you an infection. The hands on the right hand of your screen, the black tips of this person's fingers, those parts of her hand are now dead. They have been, there's no more living tissue there. And this is what high phosphorus over a long period of time can do. And if it gets worse, it could end up seriously creating some major damage, amputations, and possibly death. So your kidneys, how do your kidneys work? What do your kidneys do? How do your kidneys play a part in phosphorus? Each kidney has over 1 million nephrons. So we have 2 kidneys, and so we have about 2 million of these nephrons, and these nephrons, when working correctly, are what filters your blood. And it's really, your nephrons are what's important for the reclaiming of the water, or the balancing of the electrolytes, including your phosphorus. And nephrons, who knew, but nephrons filter 1,600 liters of blood a day and form 180 liters of this ultrafiltrate, which mainly gets resorbed back into your body and goes back into your blood supply to make sure that your body is balancing your sodium and your potassium and your phosphorus and your calcium and all the fluid levels all right. And then when your kidneys are working the right way, you urinate about 1.5 liters of waste a day. So you take 1,600 liters of blood every day, and your kidneys work so hard, and you filter out and you urinate out about 1.5 liters as waste. That's pretty amazing. But when your kidneys aren't working the way that they should, you might end up on dialysis. And this is a picture of the dialysis machine, and then inside is the dialysate, and that filter that your blood goes through. And what it is, the dialysate, which is that fluid, is pulling out the different electrolytes, so the calcium and the potassium and the phosphorus and any extra waste and fluid goes out into this water. Or like mixture, it's not really water, but phosphorus is really large, and so it doesn't move as well through this filter. So we have to make sure that we don't get the phosphorus, we don't absorb the phosphorus. So phosphorus in dialysis, the phosphorus in our food and our blood is in the form of phosphates. Your dietitian on dialysis must probably talk to you a lot about looking for phosphates. And this is why, because our body, this is the form of phosphorus we use. And they're made up of multiple atoms. It's a big molecule. It's phosphorus and 4 oxygen molecules. And so it's a large molecule, and it's hard for it to be removed during dialysis. So the best way to manage your phosphorus levels is to limit how much you actually eat or you're actually absorbing from the foods that you're eating. You don't want to be like that sponge soaking up all that water. So limiting foods that are high in phosphorus can really help keep your phosphorus within normal limits. Phosphorus is a really highly absorbable food, and it's found in most of these foods. And a good rule of thumb I always like to say is if there is protein, there's going to be some phosphorus. If you think about it, protein is necessary for our muscles. Phosphorus is a main component in our energy molecule. Protein is essential for just life in general and our bones and things like that. So where there's going to be protein, there's going to be phosphorus. So foods that are high in phosphorus are going to be your meats, your whole grains, your dairy, your beans, and your nuts. All of these foods are high in protein. And also they're high in potassium. So also you can think about, like, if it's going to be high in phosphorus, it's also probably high in potassium. Foods with a very little to no phosphorus are going to be your fruits and vegetables. But again, as you know, those are also high in potassium. So, I mean, it's a really balancing act. So how do you combat that? And now it's made even more difficult because phosphorus is found in a lot of our processed foods. So I always like to say if it's in a bag or a box, there's a really good chance that there's going to be some type of phosphorus additive. And these phosphorus additives are becoming more and more prevalent in our food supply. And the other thing is they're not found on the nutrition label. It's coming soon, and it might have already happened. They're now labeling how much potassium is in foods, which is amazing, and I'm super excited about that. And that is great for the dialysis population. But they don't put on how much phosphorus which is in actual food. So it's not on the nutrition label. So that's why we have to become these phosphorus detectives, because you need to know where to find it and how much it actually has. So if you're a phosphorus detective, you're buying a food in a box or a bag, you got to look at the ingredient label. You're not going to be looking on the nutrition facts panel. You're going to be looking where it actually has the ingredients. And you're going to be looking for words that have the ingredients that have the word phos, P-H-O-S. It could either be in the form of phosphate or phosphoric and then acid. But a lot of times these foods have phosphoric acid and phosphate. So if you see the red arrows, those are the 2 added phosphoruses that are in this food, which happens to be a ranch dressing. So there's phosphoric acid, and then disodium phosphate is in most ranch dressings. So there's 2 different sources of added phosphorus. So this is why you have to sit down and really spend a good amount of time in finding different foods that of these like ranch dressings or of the like packaged lunch meats that don't have more than 1 added phosphorus or have no added phosphorus. And remember, if it's at the top of the list, there is more, that means that it's a higher amount of phosphorus than if it's at the bottom of the ingredient list. So that's another way to become a phosphorus detective. How many added phosphoruses are actually in the ingredients? Where are they on the nutrition label? So again, here we go, phosphorus detective. These are the most common foods that are like phosphorus additives. So I mean, like sodium polyphosphate, monocalcium phosphate, ferric phosphate. I mean, these are hexametaphosphate. I mean, I don't even know what that is, but I do know that I absorb 100% of that phosphorus that's in that hexametaphosphate. So this is what you have to do, and they don't highlight the word phos in there. You have to scour and look in the ingredient label, like in here, for these foods and for these ingredients. So foods that are really well known that have added phosphorus are those pancake and biscuit mixes. Fast food has a lot of added phosphorus. Frozen dinners and lunch meats, hot dogs, hot dog and hamburger buns, probably shake and bake, those types of like breading mixes, but less well known. So this is where it gets tricky, right? So we know to avoid these foods that have these added phosphorus, and we know to maybe take an extra phosphorus binder if you're going to a cookout or something like that. But what we don't a lot of times realize is that other foods have these phosphorus additives, and foods that we have always thought were okay for the renal diet. So like white rice, a lot of times it has ferric phosphate added to it. White bread, or a lot of bread products have added phosphorus to it. Non-dairy creamer, Cool Whip. So prepackaged meats, not meaning like the lunch meats, because they also have added phosphorus, but those prepackaged meats that are like a ground chicken or ground turkey or a chicken breast that has a seal over it. It's not like vacuum sealed or all around the meat. There's some air that's above that meat. It's in like one of those deep like containers that actually has nitrogen gas in there to help keep it fresh, along with phosphorus. So that nitrogen phosphorus gas, that phosphorus is going to leach into that food a little bit and add phosphorus to you. Jello, some Tums, your dietitian, myself included, sometimes have told people, oh, well, if you run out of phosphorus binders, you can use Tums. Well, you got to read the back of the label of the Tums, because they actually do, or any antacid, because they can have added phosphorus to it. And albacore canned tuna, you got to find the tuna that on the can that doesn't have added phosphorus. You really are a detective. And the thing about these phosphorus additives that are so very damaging is we absorb 100% of these phosphorus. We don't absorb 100% of phosphorus that is naturally found in food. So even let's say you're eating something that might be high in phosphorus, like some meat or some beans or something like that, you're not absorbing all of the phosphorus that's in that product unless it has phosphorus additives in it. So if you think about it, our body absorbs 100% of phosphorus additives. We absorb about 80% of natural phosphorus in the dairy. We absorb about 60% of phosphorus that's in meat and nuts. And then we absorb about 40% of the natural phosphorus in the grains. So if you think about that and you choose some lunch meat, I'm just using that as a good example, but you choose some lunch meat that has added phosphorus, you're going to absorb about 60% of the natural phosphorus that's in that sliced turkey, plus 100% of those phosphorus additives. So it's like a double whammy of phosphorus. So that's why choosing food, reading those labels and choosing food that does not have added phosphorus is really important. Also, you can't manage your phosphorus on your own without medication for the most part. Most people have to be on some type of phosphorus binder. I mean, it would be great, but binders are there for a reason, and they act like a phosphorus net or a cloud. And what ends up happening is your body, you take these binders about 5 to 10 minutes before you eat, your body breaks it down, and it opens up into like a cloud. And then you eat, and the food passes through, and the phosphorus will stick to the medicine in the binder. And then I know this is gross, and maybe it's around lunchtime, but then you poop it out. And so you don't absorb that phosphorus. And remember, the reason this is so important is phosphorus is not that well removed during dialysis. So the only way to get rid of phosphorus is not to absorb, well, there's not the only way. So the best way to get rid of phosphorus is not to absorb it by taking your binders. The second best way is then what will end up happening is the more you move, because remember it is our energy molecule, the more you move and the more active you are, you will burn up phosphorus as well. And then there's the dialysis that will remove a little bit. It's recommended to take your phosphorus binders about 5 to 15 minutes before eating, due to the binder needing to, if you think about it, if you have a headache and you take some pain medication, it doesn't work just like that. It has to dissolve and it has to go through. Same thing with the binder. So, I mean, granted, taking it 5 to 10 minutes before, 5 to 15 minutes before you eat is best. But a lot of times people forget to do that. So what do you do if you forget to eat it? Don't be like, oh no, I forgot to eat, I forgot to take it and I just shouldn't take it at all. Take it right before or with the first couple of bites of your meal. That's best if you forget to take it beforehand. Take it in the middle of your meal. That's fine too. Take it right after the meal if that's when you remember. But after about like 30 minutes or so, I mean, you can still take it and maybe you'll bind a little bit of the phosphorus, but it doesn't really bind that much because it has to break down and dissolve to bind up that phosphorus. There's different types of binders, and there's new ones coming on the market all the time, but the most common are the Renvela and Renagel. It's made from a non-absorbable substance. Phoslo or calcium acetate, which is made with calcium. Phosrenol is also made with a non-absorbable substance, and this is actually a chewable medication. Velphoro is made with iron. It is also a chewable medication. So the chewable ones you can actually take right with the beginning of your meal because you're already breaking it down. You don't have to worry about your stomach acids breaking it down for you. Auryxia is another pill, and it's also made with iron. But also remember that binders aren't going to bind all of the phosphorus that we eat. Number one, we need phosphorus to build our bones and teeth and have energy. And number two, there's just a lot of phosphorus in all the food that we eat. So the average binder is going to bind about 40 to 100 milligrams of phosphorus. Asking your doctor which one is the best one for you is always recommended. But just a little FYI, a half of a skinless roasted chicken breast has 196 milligrams of phosphorus. So again, making sure you remember to take your phosphorus binders is really, really important because if you don't take it, you're going to absorb all of the phosphorus that you're eating, So phosphorus, you really need to, keep it on target. You want to make sure that you're keeping your bones and your teeth healthy. It's going to help you keep a high energy level. It's going to sustain a lot of your cellular functions. And you want to keep it in that sweet spot, right? It's the 3.0 to 5.5 milligrams per deciliter. I like that picture. But in a good way to control your phosphorus is to avoid any prepackaged foods as much as possible. Like I said before, if it's in a bag or a box, there is a really good chance that there is added phosphorus. You're going to find foods that don't have phosphorus on the label. Maybe even if you have a smartphone or like a little pad that you keep in your purse or wallet, you can write down different name brands of foods that don't have any added phosphorus. So that way, when you go to the grocery store, you're not sitting there spending all of this time like, oh my goodness, I don't know which ranch dressing to pick, or I don't know which bread to pick, or I don't know which rice is okay. If you keep a good running list of these things, checking periodically to see if they've changed the recipe is good, but because there are ranch dressings that don't have added phosphorus. They are few and far between, but they do exist. Cooking at home, you are in control then. You know exactly what's going in your food. Avoiding fast food because they're using a lot of processed foods. And processed foods are going to have a lot of phosphorus additives. Phosphorus additives, we're like, why do we even have them? What's the purpose? They keep food shelf stable. They are an antimicrobial, so they'll fight off different things that can make your food go bad and make you sick. Also, staying away from cola, even some root beers or orange sodas and canned and bottled teas actually have added phosphorus. So, you always want to make sure you're reading the label because some orange soda doesn't have added phosphorus, whereas some does. So you just got to make sure you find the right combination for you, and water is best. Another way to control your phosphorus is increasing your daily activity level. So the more you move, the more ATP you use, and the more ATP you use, the more phosphorus you're using. Making sure you remember to take your binders before you eat. if you're going out to dinner, if you know you're going to a barbecue, if you know that you're going to be eating something that's going to be really high in phosphorus, take an extra binder. So that way it's going to bind up more of that phosphorus. Also, keeping phosphorus binders in a whole bunch of different places, wherever it is that you find that you might eat. So if you like to sit on the couch and have a snack, or if you always have some on your kitchen table if that's where you eat, have them in your glove compartment so that way when you're driving and you're like, oh, you know, I'm hungry, I skipped lunch, oh, I'm going to go, but dang it, I don't have my binders. But you're like, aha, I do. I have some in my glove compartment. Or just keeping some in your purse or in your wallet. You know, just keeping an extra Velphoro in your wallet. That would be great. And then really, when you're a true phosphorus master detective, that's when you are reading these labels every time you go, and you're choosing the foods that don't have any added phosphorus. You're choosing foods that are lower in phosphorus, and you're always remembering to take your binders. And then just increasing your daily activity level. I mean, I just can't say enough about that. I mean, it helps with all sorts of everything. And that's pretty much it. I feel like I kind of flew through that really fast. So, but I have a feeling that we might have a lot of questions. So I'm hoping that that's the case.
Well, we actually probably do have a lot of questions because this is a really, really great and informative webinar. So we have some questions from our audience.
Yay!
So one that we have is, how much should someone limit their phosphorus intake in stage 2 CKD? And what about stage 3?
I think when you're talking stage 2 and stage 3 CKD, that is such an important time in kidney disease because that is when it can be almost halted. I would just recommend 100% avoiding all types of phosphorus additives. Eating lean sources of protein, maybe even limiting a little bit. You know, don't go overboard with the protein. Avoiding red meat and eating more beans and fish and chicken because those will be a little bit lower in phosphorus, and also they're not as, red meat has a tendency to constrict your vessels, and so it can be a little bit harder on your kidneys for that. But avoid all phosphorus additives at all costs.
Okay, so here's another one we got. Since phosphorus is practically in everything, how do you maintain a good practice of keeping it low, especially when you have a poor appetite?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you have a poor appetite and your phosphorus is high, then you'll have to take more binders because it's more important for you to get the essential nutrition than it is for you, because you can manage your phosphorus with medication. It's more important for you to eat and focus on doing that. Eating foods that are maybe high in calorie and high in protein will be the best way to get more calories and protein into you with a smaller amount, like eating a little bit more of like a chicken salad. I like to always say, like, if you have a poor appetite, having some chicken salad in your refrigerator at all times is really important. So every time you walk by that refrigerator, if you just take a little scoop of chicken salad on like a Triscuit or on a wheat thin, by the time you walk by your refrigerator in a day, you're probably getting an extra 1/4 of a cup of good sources of protein and calories because you're making it with whole mayonnaise and things like that. And just maybe having, if your phosphorus is high, just making sure that you have some, like taking some binders with that. If your phosphorus is low, then you don't have to worry about it, or normal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's another. So what happens if your phosphorus is too low?
Okay, if your phosphorus is too low, that's kind of one of my favorite things, because then you don't need to take binders. And then you get to eat a little bit more things. If your phosphorus is low and your potassium is low, then that means you get to open up your world of food. But if your phosphorus is low, then choosing foods that are higher in phosphorus, like the good sources of proteins, and as long as you're potassium, that's where you have to really watch it, and that's where you work with your dietitian in center, saying like, because maybe your potassium is within limits, and then you can eat some nuts, and nuts are a great source. But if your phosphorus is low, then I mean this kind of goes against every fiber of my being, but have some ranch dressing. Eat some lunch meat where those added phosphoruses are. I mean, like that will help boost your phosphorus, but I mean that's only recommended if your phosphorus is low.
Okay. So what if you eat phosphorus right before dialysis? Will it be filtered out?
No. Because if you think about it, it'll take a while for your body to absorb that. It'll take a while for it then to go through your liver. It'll take a while to get into your bloodstream. And dialysis doesn't really filter out phosphorus all that well. Same thing when it comes to potassium. If you're going to eat a high potassium food or something like that, doing it right before dialysis isn't going to help clean that out.
Is that a common myth?
Yeah, it is kind of a common myth. Absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense. I can see why it's a common myth.
So another question, are binders by prescription?
Yes, they are absolutely by prescription. Your doctor and you and your dietitian should be all working, or your entire medical team should all be working together to find out which one works best for you. A lot of times it has to do with insurance and things like that. And before starting any type of medication regime or whatnot, let's say for some reason insurance you're having some difficulty getting your binders, because that can really be a case, and people might run out of binders and they might not have the right insurance, or I don't even know, but you might need to take like Tums or an antacid. But you always, before starting doing anything like that, you got to talk to your doctor about like, hey, I ran out of my binders. I've got some more coming, or I don't know when the next batch is coming. Do you have any samples? Number one. Number two, should I take Tums? Can I take Tums? What do you want me to do?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So can binders be changed if they're exposed to excessive heat, such as by keeping them in the glove box? Climate. I
have no idea. That is a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a pharmacist would know that.
Yeah, or maybe there might be something on the label, but
yeah,
a pharmacist, yeah.
But I've never thought about that. I'm going to actually research that and get back to the American Kidney Fund with that answer.
Okay, thank you. Another question, if a person has a family history of diabetes but has no detectable kidney disease yet, would it be prudent to be cautious about phosphorus?
Yes, I think it's prudent for every single person on the face of this earth to be prudent about phosphorus additives, not about natural phosphorus, but phosphorus additives. If choosing foods that don't have any added phosphorus can only help us, because no matter what, there has been some like peer-reviewed studied articles that I can't rattle off the names of right now, but have shown just an increase in serum phosphorus within our blood levels. Not high, they're not like elevated, but maybe it's gone from like the average, Western diet person has had a phosphorus of like a 3.8 and now it's a 4.2. And that can end up, long-term causing problems. Absolutely.
Right, thank you. So another question, what about protein shakes?
Protein shakes are a really difficult one. If you have pre-dialysis kidney disease, stay away from protein shakes. If you are on dialysis and you are having difficulty meeting your protein goals, talk to your dietitian. Maybe there's a protein bar, maybe there is a protein drink. A protein shake a lot of times has a lot of fluid in it and maybe even added phosphorus. I know that there are some brands out there that have less phosphorus in their protein powders. Making your own protein shake is a good thing. Again, always talking with your dietitian, because she or he actually knows what your levels look like. Let's say now you've gotten a kidney transplant and you are in need of some added protein. a protein shake might be a good way to get that. But really, I mean, try to get your protein through a natural, non-fluid source.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned exercise. So what type of exercise do you recommend to decrease phosphorus levels?
That is a great question. You've got to, I mean, like any type of movement is going to increase it's going to use up this ATP molecule, right? And so any type of activity is good. You've got to talk with your doctor about any type of like physical activity routine, but I love to just recommend right out the bat, you know, like after dinner, every night going on a brisk walk. I don't care if that brisk walk is out the front door to your mailbox and back, or if it's around the block, or if it's a half an hour walk, whatever works for you. But if you do it every single day after dinner, you're going to eat less. So you're going to eat less phosphorus if you eat less, and it's going to increase your energy level, and it's going to help you decrease a little bit of weight if you need to. If not, it's just going to help get your cardiovascular system going. You want to definitely talk to your doctor about like starting any type of like weight-bearing exercise or anything like that because of like fistulas and grafts and things like that. But I mean, even just doing some body weight exercises and some cardio would help.
Okay, so I just want to remind everyone, we have a lot of great questions. So just as a reminder again, that this webinar is going to be posted on our website within 1 to 2 weeks at kidneyfund.org/webinars. Or you can just go to our website and you can search for it and it'll be there. So another question that we got, Carolyn, is I have stage 3B CKD, also a dairy farmer. Any low dairy phosphorus products?
Yes, cream cheese is a low phosphorus dairy product. Cheddar cheese, I do believe, is also lower in phosphorus. And interestingly enough, 2% milk versus, like, you have less phosphorus in 2% milk than you do in skim milk. So 2% milk products or like 2% yogurt, things like that will have less phosphorus. Because I guess if you think about it, like, and this is just me thinking about it in my brain, you have to, it sounds ridiculous, but to get a skim milk product or a skim dairy product, you're removing fat, so it has to be 8 ounces of 2% milk has fat globules in it, right? Versus 8 ounces of skim milk doesn't have any of the fat molecules in there. So you've got more potassium and more phosphorus to make up that 8 ounces. It's really interesting, but that's my vision of why that's true. But yeah, 2% milk products have less phosphorus.
So for a vegan diet, trying to eliminate protein to decrease phosphorus, such as nuts, beans, and soy, what then does a vegan eat for protein?
So on a vegan diet, because no matter what kind of source of protein you're going to eat, there's going to be plenty of phosphorus and there's going to be plenty of potassium. So you can still eat the phosphorus or the nuts and the beans and the legumes and things like that and the lentils for your and the soy for your protein sources. You just have to make sure that you're taking your binders.
Okay. So I have stage 3 CKD. I drink a ton of Diet Cola and very little water. Very bad.
Change that. Change that to, like, when you say a ton of Diet Cola, I'm just going to envision myself 3 years ago, and I would drink like 2 32-ounce, containers of Diet Pepsi. I love it. It's delicious, and I can't lie, right? I now will drink 1 Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke now that I'm in the DC area and Pepsi's hard to find. Maybe once a week, if that, and I drink a lot of water. If you don't like water, maybe it's because you think it doesn't have any flavor or whatnot. You can, this sounds bizarre, but it's actually delicious. You can slice up a lemon, throw it in there, take some mint sprigs, throw it in your water, get a big old pitcher, fill it up with water, put it in your refrigerator, and now you've got this lovely, refreshing lemon mint water. If you don't like lemon, try strawberries, try cucumbers. But adding mint adds a whole new dimension to that. So I think that's really what picked up my water intake, was having a cold pitcher of water always on hand. And it has lemon and mint in it.
All right, thank you. Have you had physicians push vegan diets for stage 5 patients and CKD 1 through 4?
There's a lot of buzz around now about vegan diets, and I know that pre-dialysis, you need to monitor your protein intake and eating foods that are not going to be constricting your veins, like red meat, and making sure you're not eating too much protein. The Western diet is full of protein, so limiting that and choosing leaner sources of protein like beans and things like that is a great way of doing that. I know there are some doctors out there that really promote a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. As long as you're getting the nutrients that you need, like the B vitamins and your B12, then I think that's a totally fine thing to do. Vegetables and whole grains are really important in our life, and I don't know if they play as much of a part as they should.
Okay. Do you have a pantry shopping list that you might recommend that would help with navigating the grocery store shelves?
Wow, that's pretty much exactly the conversation we were having before this webinar. And it's a really big deal. No, I don't. But I will also say that I'm the crazy lady in the grocery store that reads everything and yells at products because they're always changing what's in what they make and how they make these foods, and they're changing the ingredients. And so one day this bag of rice is okay, the next time you go and you buy it, the formula has changed. I think you finding the foods that you like the best, maybe before going to the grocery store, sit down and think about your staple foods. I really, maybe you really like rice and you really like lunch meat, and you really like ranch dressing, and you really like cereal. Those are your staples that are always in your cupboard. Well, then you go to the grocery store, maybe you take a day off from work. I don't know, that sounds like an awful day off from work, but you go to the grocery store when it's not busy, which is normally a Tuesday, and you go and you spend a good amount of time there researching and reading these labels on rice and lunch meat, and then you write down the brands that you like and the ones that you try, and then you can keep a running list of that. But they change all the time.
Okay. One question is, I've been trying to convince some of my doctors to change their mindset when it comes to additives, natural phosphorus items, but some are very hard-headed. Any suggestions to help me convince them?
Find peer-reviewed journal articles. Google that. Anything from the NIH is always good. The Journal of Clinical Nutrition, JAMA, the Journal of American Medicine, I think is JAMA. I don't know. But you've got to find a peer-reviewed journal article. And you can find abstracts and things like that for free on the internet. And you can even sometimes find full-on articles, but it's hard to find things on food additives because nutrition research is hard to do, and it's expensive.
Mm. Can you speak about phosphorus levels in non-dairy milk, like almond, cashew, rice milk?
Yeah, actually. So I know that a lot of these non-dairy milks actually have added phosphorus. So the original Rice Dream does not have any added phosphorus. As of the last time I looked, maybe now it does. It was funny because the organic version actually did have added phosphorus, so that makes no logical sense. You just, again, it's like any other product. Some will have added phosphorus and some won't. The ones that don't have added phosphorus, they all have some type of phosphorus because pretty much everything has some type of phosphorus if it has any type of protein. But like almond milk is probably the best when it comes to that, because even though it's made from almonds, it doesn't have all that much protein in it. So.
Do you need to be concerned about added calcium? Will that affect your phosphorus levels?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer, but my gut says yes. But I don't know. So don't listen to that. Ask your doctor.
Okay. My dietitian says you can't get enough protein, but many sources of protein have a lot of phosphorus. Are there some sources that are better than others?
You want to take those sources of protein that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. I love eggs. Eggs, now granted, they only have like 7 grams of protein for a little egg, but they are a great little thing that you can carry with you if you like hard-boiled eggs. They don't have that much phosphorus. It's the complete food, in my opinion. Also, chicken and fish. Fish is another great source of low phosphorus, high protein. So as long as it's not the like canned tuna that has the added phosphorus in it, but like just a good like fresh fish of like salmon or tuna or catfish. I mean, whatever, any type of fish is going to be high in protein, lower in phosphorus, and lower in potassium too.
Is hemp protein powder safe for a person on hemodialysis?
I don't know. That would be a good question for like your doctor, because each hemp protein powder would have its own like its own formula and its own ingredients. So I mean, like in theory, yeah, it's fine, but I mean, again, you've got to look at that ingredient label and take a picture and show it to your doctor. That's always a good thing, or your dietitian. She's really smart.
Okay. Should you bake your own bread? Does flour itself contain phosphorus?
Flour itself does not. Baking powder I think it's baking powder contains phosphorus, or added phosphorus. You will use such minimal amount of that baking powder, it's either baking powder or baking soda, I'm not sure which, and I should have known that before today, but it will add minimal amount, and that is an okay thing. Okay. Especially if you're going to make your own bread. Now, it's when you like buy that white bread that's on the store shelf that not only has the baking powder in it, but it also has more added phosphorus in there. That's when you get into trouble, phosphorus-wise.
So another question, whey protein is usually what is recommended when a protein supplement is needed. Do you know if rice protein or vegan protein powders, etc., are a good choice as well?
They certainly can be a good choice. Whey protein is, the gold standard. It's what we've always have used. But they are coming out with like pea protein and rice protein and these different vegan proteins. And as long as, again, it goes back to looking at your at the ingredients, and as long as there's not a whole list of phosphorus additives in there, then you're good. I mean, like, gosh, I did a big old long research on this, actually for my webinar that I did last year for you guys on protein. I looked at all sorts of different protein powders and things like that. Target's got a great section of protein powders, both vegan and non-vegan, and just reading the ingredient labels will help you decipher that.
So you mentioned almond milk before. What about flax milk, coconut milk as alternatives to almond milk?
Okay, coconut milk I'm not sure about. That makes me a little bit nervous because coconuts are really high in potassium. Flaxseed milks I think should be fine. And if your coconut milk, now that potassium is on the label, if your coconut milk is under like 250 milligrams of potassium per like serving, just make sure you don't go over a serving and you should be fine.
Here's a question about the natural versus added phosphorus. How do you determine from a label on a package what is natural phosphorus and what is added?
Easy. If it is on the label, if under ingredients, it is not natural phosphorus. If it is a chicken breast, they're not going to list the actual what is in that chicken breast. We know that the chicken breast is made up of water and protein and phosphorus and potassium, all these ingredients that make up the chicken breast. But after that, I mean, like if it's on the ingredient and there's the word phosphoric or phosphate, that is, that's added phosphorus.
Okay. So one thing you mentioned, Carolyn, is, you've mentioned a lot work with your dietitian. What's the best way for someone to work with a dietitian?
That is a wonderful question. So if you are on dialysis, you have a dietitian in your center, and I will guarantee you that she would be really excited if you, or he were to get say, hey, can we set up a meeting and talk? I have some questions, and actually set up a meeting, a time to go in and sit down and really work with that. Let's say you aren't on dialysis yet and you are in stage 3, stage 4, stage 5 of kidney disease, but no dialysis. Once you hit, I do believe it's stage 4, a meeting with a dietitian is paid for by insurance. So talk to your kidney doctor, talk to your nephrologist about that, and they should have some really good resources. If not, you can go on to the Academy, that's the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We'll have a list of dietitians around your area.
Okay, thank you. So is the phosphorus level something that the doctor is regularly monitoring?
If you have kidney disease. Yeah, and actually, I do believe, no, you know what, when I get my blood drawn, I do not get my phosphorus levels drawn. So if you don't have kidney disease, they're probably not monitoring it. If you do, if you're going and seeing a kidney doctor, then absolutely, they are on top of that. Okay.
So now potassium is now on food labels. Will phosphorus be on labels anytime soon too?
Oh my God, wouldn't that just be a perfect world? I have not heard of anything about that. I mean, when that happens, I will probably start crying for joy, but I wouldn't bet on it anytime. It took a long time just to get potassium on the label, so it'll take a while.
Okay, and you mentioned exercise, even if you have to walk to the mailbox or something. So one question, exercise tires me out easily. How can I use more ATP and still stay healthy? Does that walk really make a difference?
Yeah, it really does absolutely make a difference, because let's say you get tired easily. That's okay. So you do what you can do. And then for a month you do, let's say you just walk up and down your steps for a month or out to the mailbox and back for a month. And then maybe the next month you go 3 steps further and you do that. So the more and more you do, the more and more, as long as you don't have some type of joint problem, the more and more you are not working out, I hate that word, but increasing your physical activity, the better off your cardiovascular system, you're using more ATP, you're getting more and more energy. I mean, I know that these people say that oh, when you go to the gym, you have all this extra energy, and that's actually true. It takes a while to get to that point. But after you start doing something for a while and it becomes routine, then you really do increase that energy level. Maybe it's not like you're going to go and leap buildings in a single bound, but you will notice that you'll have a little bit extra energy.
So white bread has high phosphorus. Are there other breads that have less?
Yeah, I always those artisanal breads, right? So you go and it's a bread that's actually baked in the bakery or in the grocery store. Those are going to have less phosphorus because they won't be putting in a bunch of added fake ingredients that you might find at a big bread making facility. Also, wheat bread a lot of times is less. Rye bread is less. Now, then you get into this juggle with your potassium, but a good old sandwich wheat bread should be just fine. Or if you like rye bread, that'd be fine too.
The sodium, is that a concern?
Sodium is always a concern, but then you're wondering, you got to eat more protein, you've got to eat low in potassium, you got to eat low in phosphorus, and now you can't eat sodium, so just don't add salt to your food. I mean, because otherwise you're just eating cardboard.
So if I get a transplant, and can I eat high phosphorus foods again immediately, or do I have to wait several days for the kidney to filter the excess phosphorus stored up in my blood?
So one of the great things that I love about working in transplant is I get to talk to people about how their diet really opens up after you get a transplant. And high phosphorus actually is, it might take a few days for it to go down, and it might go up and down, and and your transplant team is going to work really closely with you about these things. But a lot of times these medications, some of the side effects is actually low phosphorus. So sometimes, this is hilarious, but sometimes I have to tell my patients, now you need to go and find those foods with added phosphorus and you need to eat those. So it's kind of the opposite when you get a transplant. But it just all depends on what your labs look like.
There's another question about bread. I love bread.
Yeah, well, bread's delicious.
What about the challah bread or the multi-grain bread?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that should be really challah. I mean, that's being made in a smaller time bakery area, so it's not gonna have those dicalcium phosphates, added into it, because I don't even know where you would find that. But yeah, so challah should be fine. Multi-grains should be fine. And again, if it comes with an ingredient label on it, that's the way you're gonna find it.
What about coffee and bag tea, like the tea bags?
Oh, those are fine. Yeah, tea bags are great. Those are wonderful. Yeah, coffee is not high in phosphorus either. It's those canned teas and those canned coffee drinks. Again, if it's in a bag, box, or can, you got to look at the label.
Okay, we have time for a couple of more short ones. Can I take 2 phosphorus binders before a meal to bind double the amount of phosphorus?
I mean, when it comes to any type of medication and things like that, I really always want to, stress talking to your doctor about any type of pharmaceutical thing. But that being said, I mean, if you always recommended, if you're going to eat a higher phosphorus meal, to take maybe an extra binder.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll bind double the amount, but.
So what is the max number of phosphate binders one can take in a day?
That I certainly am going to say talk to your doctor about.
Okay. Let's see. So to prevent bone disease as a kidney patient, should one start taking vitamin D and calcium supplements?
So that is really based on what your PTH, your calcium, and your phosphorus levels are looking like. So you need to work with your dietitian, your nephrologist when it comes to that, because it is this very intricate relationship between your kidneys, vitamin D, calcium, phosphorus, and PTH before. So I don't want you to start taking a whole bunch of vitamin D and then messing something up.
Okay, we have time for one last one. Can you take binders if you're not on dialysis?
If your phosphorus is high and your nephrologist has recommended that, then absolutely, I will see patients before they start dialysis in the transplant clinic that I work in, and some of them are on a phosphorus binder. But again, that's up to you and your doctor and your medical team.
Okay. So are there any kind of last thoughts? We have just a minute or two left that you'd like to leave the audience with regarding binders, or anything else that you think would be really key for them to know?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot stress enough to read the labels and to cook at home. If that is a possibility, cooking at home. Oh, also, let's say you're going out to eat at a fast food restaurant. Don't get anything fried. A lot of times, the hamburger, this sounds weird, the hamburger will have less phosphorus than the fried chicken sandwich because of the breading on the chicken. So choosing a grilled chicken sandwich or a hamburger without cheese, maybe getting it without the bun's going to have a lot of added phosphorus and calories too. So, there's a lot of those places now that'll do a hamburger in a lettuce, or a chicken sandwich with lettuce as the bun, doing something like that.
But you could ask for that.
Or you could ask for that, absolutely. Yeah. Right? There's some, I like it my way or something like that, I don't know.
Well, thank you again, Carolyn, for joining us and leading such an excellent webinar. At this time, I'd like to remind our audience that our next webinar will be about the process of advocating for a rare disease and how patients with kidney disease can get involved in advocacy work. The webinar will be held on Thursday, July 26th, and hosted by a patient advocate Angeles Herrera, and AKF Vice President of Government Affairs, Holly Bolt. So registration is now open. Visit kidneyfund.org/webinars for more information and to register. When this webinar closes, please do not close your browser window. You may see a pop-up saying that the webinar is ended. Please close that pop-up and proceed to the webinar evaluation survey. Your honest feedback will help us make our webinar program the best it can be. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again.